for Science, polymath, great champion for science. Please welcome Barry Jones.
The American politician Daniel Patrick Moynihan memorably said, "Everyone is entitled to his or her own opinion, but not to his or her own facts." Now, there is currently, if not a war on science, there's certainly a war on scientific method and the idea of collecting evidence as a basis for policy formulation. And you can see that in recent years with the very severe cuts to CSIRO and a whole number of the scientific agencies, although it may be fair to say that medicine has been treated in a somewhat more sympathetic way. It's been more than a quarter of a century since I got kicked out as Minister for Science because I kept raising issues with my colleagues that they didn't want to hear about. And I have to confess that I failed to get science properly on the political agenda to such an extent that it couldn't be extruded at any time in the future. And it seems to me that we haven't always had ministers for science since 1990, but a number of them seem to have followed the Trappist approach and taken a vow of silence, and to say the least they say about silence, the better. And it's hard now to identify anyone in the Commonwealth Parliament, and I'm completely bipartisan in this, who you can say takes the serious issue, and I think that's true even in the Senate, who really takes science seriously. You know, we had a science statement earlier this year. Of course, what that meant was that a press release came out. And the press release came out, and I've never come across anyone who's heard a single reference to the science statement since then. Now, we read every day about fake news, about alternative facts, and a post-truth era. And there is a very disturbing conflict between evidence and opinion. People say, well, you may have evidence, but I've got very strong opinions. And political processes, particularly in the short term, tend to be driven by opinion rather than evidence. Belief carries more weight than knowledge. And politicians and spin doctors no longer ask, is it true? They ask, will it sell? Now, political discourse relies on an assumption of shared knowledge, but that may be a very dangerous assumption. Psychologists confirm that we habitually engage in the cherry picking of evidence. We choose the bits that we're emotionally, intuitively attracted to and comfortable with. In Australia, when politics and science clash, politics and vested interest always wins, and the outcome is always bad. No politician from the major parties will say, with climate change, coal is the problem. Each tonne of coal produces 3.67 tonnes of CO2, which hangs around in the atmosphere and traps heat from the sun for decades, perhaps longer, before dispersing. Now, I've never heard a politician from the Coalition or the ALP use those words, and yet it's the rationale for action. Instead, politicians from both major parties say privately, we can't speak out about coal because there are seats in Queensland with significant employment dependent on coal. And if we phase out coal, Pauline Hanson will win more votes. So they take the vow of silence. And when we talk about natural gas as a solution, no politician will mention the production on the side of methane, a far more efficient heat trap than CO2 ever was. It's the same with sugar. Worldwide sugar production now earns more than wheat. One crop is addictive, has negative health implications, the other provides nutrition. Sugar's a great consumer of water and can help wreck forests. It produces serious health problems including obesity, diabetes, and children become sugar addicts from infancy. Will politicians act to curb sugar consumption or junk food? Certainly not. Even more seats are dependent on sugar than on coal, and professional lobbyists and generous funding for political parties and generous job offers for retiring politicians are far more persuasive than scientists, however eminent. Social scientists have produced compelling statistics about Australia's addiction to gambling, where according to The Economist, Australia's per capita spending is #1 in the world. The evidence is indisputable. Will our major parties act to control the gambling industry? Certainly not. State governments are hopelessly addicted to the revenue collected from casinos and pokies, and major parties have been bought off, both literally and figuratively. So science and research generally are given disturbingly low priority in contemporary public life in Australia, although, as I say, medical research and astronomy may be exceptions. Scientists, especially those involved with climate change or the environment, have come under unprecedented attack, especially in the media and News Corp papers, and the whole concept of scientific method is discounted, even ridiculed. In a complex world, people are looking for simple solutions that can be expressed as slogans, and the quality of public debate on scientific issues has been trivialised, even infantilised, and the controversy on anthropogenic global warming has been conducted at an appalling level on both sides of politics. Of course, debates on refugees and taxation have been conducted at a similar level. Vaccination, fluoridation, even evolution are hotly but crudely disputed in some areas. Despite Australia's large number of graduates, more than 4.5 million, our 38 universities and intellectual class generally have very limited political leverage and appear reluctant to offend government or business by telling them what they don't want to hear. Universities have become trading corporations, not just communities of scholars. Their collective bargaining power is weak, well behind the gambling, coal or junk food lobbies, and they become easy targets in times of exaggerated budget stringency. In a democratic society such as Australia, evidence is challenged by opinion or by vested and self-interest. And as I say, we have no Minister for Science with direct ownership or involvement in promoting scientific disciplines. Of course, there is a democratic paradox, and that is, if every vote in Australian elections is of equal value, does this mean that every opinion is entitled to equal respect? It's easy to categorise experts as elitists and out of touch. There are serious problems in recruiting science teachers. Numbers of undergraduates in the enabling sciences and mathematics are falling relative to our neighbours. In an era of super specialisation, many scientists are reluctant to engage in debate even when their discipline has significant intersectoral connections. We're very fortunate today that in Fiona Stanley and of course in Peter Doherty and later on Terry Speed, who you'll hear up in the gardens, they are examples of scientists who are very committed, who are also terrific communicators. So what we need is to make sure that active citizens with a passion for science and a passion for scientific method use whatever influence they have within the political class to talk to their members and to do it consistently, not just to send the odd email, but to make their lives a misery until they really react to these things. You can't do it. It's not like vaccination. You can't do it with one shot for life. You've got to keep on doing it. And you've got to keep it on until they recognise that if we want the kind of world that eliminates the major problems, that preserves the planet, that preserves the ecology, then science has to be recognised as an important instrument, and scientific method the way in which we ought to be conducting our politics. Thank you.
Yay!
All right? Okay. Good day.
Thank you.
All right.
Not a bad communicator himself, I would say. Thank you so much, Barry Jones. And those are such wise words about how we have to keep on really pushing this science agenda and valuing science if we're going to make a difference.